Alright, okay. Okay. Me. What am I gonna do? Okay. So, let me clarify a bit. You've seen my previous rants, etc., racism, check boxes, and all that. It's hard to. People really don't want. Well, that's what they want. It's what they're allowed to show on television. Being able to show negativity on television, bullying and racism. So you want to tell a moral story about that, but you don't want to show that pesky evilness of humanity. Problem is that it's all done off screen. Where is that? It's off screen. What was it? The Proud Family, I believe, had off-screen racism. Hey, look, everyone! It's something. Then back from the commercial break, and it's resolved. Oh, it's a good thing we took care of that pesky racism. Like, actually, no, you just and remember, my generation actually read things. Well, they have us read things. One of them was called, if I remember correctly, it was called Maniac McGee. I think I might have touched on this way earlier, but what it was a story about a kid who was an orphan or a runaway or something like that, and he meets various different people. And that's what the story of the book was. He met people, and he was kind of almost magical, or people kind of thought of him as a little bit of magic because he was able to pull off like certain feats that are kind of like Herculean or like one of those Old Testament or mythical people, where it's like he pulled this thing off. Like, how the hell did he do that? He's mortal or whatnot. So he kind of pulls off some mythical shit, and the kids. And this is school ground level stuff, so it's just it's not that impressive, but it is rather impressive nonetheless. Uh, and the background was about racism, and of course, me being 8, 10 at the time, didn't know what racism is. That wasn't until 94. This was 92, 91, 92. So this was a good couple of years before the O.J. Simpson trial. Um, where the kid actually, went to this town that was divided. There was the black part of town and there was the white part of town. And he stayed with, he went to the black part of town, said because he's white, he lives clearly in the white part of town. So the family took him after. It's sort of like a weird adoption thing. I had the same thing myself where you just, invited someone home and they kind of stayed with you for like 3 years. Or at least half the time staying there. So yes, this was something I did too. You invite your friends over. Anyway, so they took him over there, and the guy says, "I know who lives here. This is not your family." But the kid was kind of embarrassed at the fact that he doesn't have a family. So they said, kind of just why don't you just stay with us? And he says, "You want to go home?" So they kind of tentatively, I kind of agree that, yeah, I know I'm lying. Why don't you just stay with us? Okay. So they stay with them, and he's living happily in the black community. Gasp! Now remember, racism works both ways, kids. I know, it's a trip, ain't it? So yeah, he's there, and he's playing in the, maybe, the pond, or, somewhere, like, some sort of where there was, like, a pool of water or something or other, and he's playing with them, he's talking to everybody else, and you're getting a little bit introspective, a little bit on life, because you're growing up, you kind of, getting older, and you have new ideas. So he's talking to them, blah, 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 and then he goes back to the house of the family he's living with, and painted across the front of it says "Fish Belly, go home," meaning that's kid speak for Whitey, get the fuck out, pretty much. In the book, it says that the mom was able to wash off the F of fish at the beginning. So when it cuts, so it shows the picture of the house. It says Ishbelly, go home, and me, it's saying, why are they calling him Fishbelly? Oh, because he's white. He's white. Why do they want him to leave? Again, his character is sublime. You love this guy. He's fat. He's nice. He's he's friendly with everyone, even though he has no respect. Hell, the kid he has a rivalry with on par where he's also has kind of like weird magical psychic powers. Not really, but it's like he has like a sentimentality that he's able to do some kind of rather interesting, crazy shit. A bit of a one-trick pony, but he too has shit, and he's his rival, and he gets along with him. That's the thing. He makes friends with everybody. But because he's white in the black part of town and acts like he lives here, because he does, it's like, but we don't want this white guy here. He's totally, it's the same thing. It's a different aspect, a different thing in another situation where it clearly doesn't belong, even though it's completely benign and is actually pretty helpful. You know, it's just not an us thing. It's not this environment. It's not like the toads in Australia where it comes in and decimates like crops and shit. It's actually cohabitating with you. But people, and I mean everybody in their little groups, say, well, we can't have this here. It's going to destroy the system. How? How is it going to destroy the system? No, it's something that's cohabitating with you that you don't like because it's different. Again, it's different, therefore it's bad. Even though every evidence to the contrary. He's fine. Everyone else is fine with him. Everyone else he meets is fine. There's people who don't know him personally hate him. It's racism, kids. It can happen to everybody. So he goes on his. He leaves the family eventually, and I think he comes back to them at the end. I forget how it goes, but he meets a lot of people, and it basically chronicles his adventures as a young youth. I highly recommend it. I believe it was called Maniac Mickey. I could be wrong about that. But anyway, that's the thing. This story's morality and racism was present. It was there. It wasn't like off screen per se. He had people actually get in his face and try to fight him a couple of times, especially in that neighborhood. People were trying to challenge him, either socially or violently. I can't remember. But he was always able to face it head on. He never ran away from mistakes. He moved on only on the basis that he felt he needed to on some other fear. But it wasn't based on fear. It was based on he needed a new place to live. But it wasn't based on fear. They didn't, bully him out. He left more on his own accord that he felt more like it was his time to, more than anything else, I believe. And so, uh, that's the thing. When I saw the episode of the Proud Family, I knew what it was that went on in the episode. It says, "Look, everyone, we came back to the house, and it goes, we'll be right back after these messages." What? And then now we're back from those important. Now we're back from these. What's the old ABC stuff? Where it goes, after these messages, we'll be right back. Goes, and now we're back after these important messages. And so they come back, and it's like, well, it's a good thing we took care of that pesky racism. And it's like that's not how that works. That's not at all how that works. Like the problem after taking down the graffiti of whatever it was that it said, it's magically okay now. Some tapes are falling. Gotta clean up that. Should need to put those back in the front room. Anyway, so okay, back to what I said about Family Matters and Edward being pulled over. We never see that. That was all set up before the credits, before the intro credits. So by the time we get that, he goes, "What did you get this parking this citation or whatever it was for?" He says, "Oh, I was," and he automatically jumps onto the. Well, clearly, I was a black kid in a white neighborhood. Clearly, it was racism. It's like, but we don't see that. We only have your word for it. So the character has to give us exposition on what had happened before the episode even started. So we're getting introduced to a complex story after the fact, after the events. But then we have, people dying on screen. Where hell, uh, 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 Carl and Steve, on separate occasions, have passed out in that living room, seemingly almost dying or being dead at the moment. They're okay afterwards. They're main characters, so they get to come back. But we have like intense stuff like that shit happening right in front of us, right there. But we can't have an off. We can't have Eddie being pulled over because then it's up to speculation or something. And it's like, look, neither it's clear cut, which means you gotta show this shit what's going on, or we have a character's word for it, which again is up to speculation because we're hearing it after the fact. We're hearing it from a second party or whatever after the events. So we as the viewers have to take it on clearly. That's what it was. It's like, are you sure? Maybe the cop was just, I don't know, being a cop. Maybe you were driving while young. What was it? And then later on, it's like, well, let me talk to you. It's like, well, I have my strong opinions. It's like, I'm pretty sure I have strong opinions on a lot of people. Ask anybody. Not everybody is their friends. Not everybody is their cup of tea. And they don't get along with everybody on the freaking planet. Yeah. So again, it's trying to tell us the story off screen after the fact and try to discover in a way that it might actually be true. But then I'm having a hard time believing it because it's like, really? A story about racism. You know what I'm saying? Yes, yes. So they're trying to tell us this thing through more of exposition and subtleness than actually being dribbled about it, where it's like a racist cop, and it's like, why don't you actually, say something direct and solid, not kind of sort of thing, because the world is not a subtle place at all. Trust me. If you have anything about that movie, that asinine movie Crash to go by, trust me, it's a lot more in your face action than anything else. But yeah, when you have emotions going on off screen, Tangled. One of the new episodes of Tangled had, you know, um, Raps talk about not talk about. She doesn't talk about her feelings. She has this dramatic, the most rated G betrayal and attempted death ever. Until later, where they said, no, 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 we really need to show that Cassandra is seriously trying to kill Rapunzel. Uh, so at that time, when she betrays Raps, it's all this rated G shit, but it's still heart wrenching. So Raps just shuts down completely and keeps on smiling. And it's like, I got to get through this because, oh wait, responsibility. So we can't dwell on that. We have trouble back at the ranch, so that's kind of just pushed aside or co-opted or whatever, interrupted. So the main plot that was just finished, that just happened, is is preemptively striked by the plot back home. So after getting through that, it says, I'm willing. So by the end of the episode, after all the singing and dancing and setting it up for the next episode, she says, I'm willing to talk about my feelings for Cassandra. So as soon as she starts talking, her voice fades out, the dialogue fades out, and then we fade off to end credits. So we never actually hear the result for that. And then also, Eugene gets to hear his results about his past and all that to a deaf Lance. So again, if you're supposed to be progressive and talk about feelings and complex stuff, why are you intentionally leaving the more interesting stuff out? We want to hear about Raps's, you know, but her hard feelings and Eugene's, have that representation. But then they can't because then they know they're writing about something they can't write about because they can only go so far with complex feelings. Of course, they're bringing variant in and out, on a whim because Raps needs not one but two friends in her corner. So therefore, of course, Variant is now on a redemption streak. Again, it's like he's evil, kind of more contrived, and then he's good again because, and it's like, huh. So, yeah, it just gets kind of silly. If you're going to tell a story completely. Don't just co-opt it and then come back to it and say, oh, and we're cut. Sorry, we're end of episode. We're out of time. It's like at the Oscars where they try to go on and on, past their 20 to 30 seconds to talk about, their platform. It's what kind of why they cut them off. and go cut to music is because you had your time. Let's go here. But in an episode, you're supposed to talk everything out, not co-opt it and then cut back to it and then say, "Oh, look at that, we're out of time." That's the problem. So and there are numerous other ones. I remember where other series and stories were supposed to be meaningful and moral and be educational and life affirming. A lot of this shit happens off screen. What was it? I think it was Braceface had actually had something a bit more of a problem. I only saw the promos for it. I never actually saw the episode itself, I believe. And what it was the racist the grandparents. You know, the people who basically live in a different decade where people say, well, it was the 90s, it was the 80s or the 70s. They're like, it was a different time. Yes, earlier in our history, being a racist asshole was okay. Yeah, that's the thing, kids. So when they had I think it was Braceface, could be wrong, but it was this episode where I'm like, oh yeah, my grandpa, he's a great guy, and he comes in and he starts just laughing his ass off of how the the Middle Eastern kid friend and the black friend are clearly stereotypes because careful, they're Habib, your camel's gonna be stolen by the black kid. And the guy is just laughing it up, and the girl kind of there like, wait, what? My grandpa's an asshole. I didn't know that. It's like, yeah. So it looked like it was shaping up to be an interesting episode. I really wish I could have seen that, but how do you deal with that is very, very interesting. I would love to know the answer. Uh, because I've come across a similar thing too, where it's like that's not a funny joke. You have fantastic comedic timing when telling a joke. That's what compels you to laugh. But honestly, it's like that's not funny. That's not funny at all. Why am I laughing at that? Because it has comedic timing. Once I dissected it and found out what it was, it's like, oh, they have good comedic timing. Okay. So yeah, if you're gonna tell a story, tell the story. Don't try to wiggle your way out of it. You know. Friendship is Magic and a lot of others kind of just bullshit their way through. Friendship is Magic, Steven Universe. They all just they just bullshit their way through this. You know, like what's his face was a good example of, if everyone can ever find this clip, it's pretty good, about Pamela Anderson, years and years, like over 20 years ago, wherever the fuck. And there was a guy who was supposedly talking about Pamela's new dress, of how it stays on her. Uh, it's something to do with glue or pasties or something like that. But he was saying, but he had a Barbie doll. Is what he had. He had put up on stage and he had a Barbie doll, and he was had a glue gun and a green piece of fabric. Now the Barbie doll is supposed to represent Pamela Anderson. The blue cloth was like the size of like this. He was waving it about, had the glue gun, and she was saying, "Oh, like this," tosses the doll away, and then holds up another doll that's already been glued and everything, so it's dried and everything, so it's fine. It says, "Oh, and there you go." It was like that. That's a good metaphor for a lot of these moral stories that only have to work within a 22-minute time frame. So therefore, you got to bullshit your way through this. And yeah, so that's a good metaphor for what this is. It's like, and then we'll put this together, not really, and then ta-da! You know, so it's like if we make you believe it, then we did our jobs right. But that's the thing, you're not supposed to make us believe it. You're supposed to give us a proper story, not try to fool us into thinking that we saw a good story. Yeah, so even a good writer or writers can be given a lot of shit for their crappy stories, is because they're being put under the gun. You know, they can't all be fleshed out. That's why Venture Brothers are awesome, is because they take the 2 to 3 years between seasons to write it good. It's an overly complex story with like 200 characters and whatever other character they have to invent as a side character for any per episode or scenes. So that's why Venture Brothers is such a long running series, because it's not bottom scraping the bottom of the barrel. The Simpsons do that. The Simpsons scrape the bottom of the barrel. They go for the easy laughs, the low hanging fruit. That's why they've lasted so long. Is because they were such a big hit in the '90s, and they say, well, why reach up for quality when we can just do bottom barrel? We get cheap laughs. So if we keep doing the cheap laughs, we can keep doing this, and we can maybe have a meaningful, slight episode, or at least an interesting episode. That's why it's lasted so long. So even though the Venture Brothers are like half as old as the Simpsons are almost going on like 30 years to be season 30 soon, if not already. I forget, it was in late 80s or early 90s, but it was that's the thing. If you take the time to flush out a story and write it good, and it is a good story, people are going to love it. If you pop these things out like Pez, like Andy, it's like, and we're handing this shit out, like, pumping this shit out like it's, like the U.S. writing checks to China. It's not going to end well for anybody. It's just, and I know the difference between a book medium and television. A book can do, can read or say anything. Television, you really can't do anything you want, depending on network and everything else. It's a horrifically complex thing. That's why the platform of YouTube is, well, it was the perfect platform, but now we got to move into library in order to actually, be away from corporate mandate. Corporate mandate is just like, we're not all cookie cutter. We can't all abide by the same rules and expect to flourish. We're not here to be censored. Not all of us. Of course, standard practices is fine. A little bit of oversight is fine. But when you become the totalitarian government where you say what you say and goes, and it's like, when you start telling everybody what they can and cannot do, or how to do this, to boss people around about their creativity, or how they utilize their creativity, their art, it just gets pretty oppressive. And it's like, I'm not showing the whole episode. I'm showing a scene of an episode, or I have it, freeze framed over my shoulder, and people are still getting upset about that at the time. Not the public, the YouTubers, not YouTubers, the YouTube corporation. It's like, copyright, then work on it. You have the money, work on it. But then they got everything all stupid and silly. It's slightly better now, but it's also slightly worse. So I don't know how to leave this off on, but having a story and having important elements happen off screen, is not how it works. I know you can't tell everything on screen, so some stuff is going to have to happen between episodes, but if you're going to talk about it, have it happen in the episode. Not before it, not after it, not after we're back after these important messages to sell you more cereal. That's what commercials are. It's to sell you shit. It's another. That's why. Was it love equal drive equals life, drive equals love equals drive, whatever, that whole thing. That is the lighter I got somewhere, I can't even remember. That's just corporate. It's more people trying to sell you something. Love equals drive. Yeah, that's where it got kind of blatant for me. After watching the shit my whole life, it's like, now it's starting to get a little. Oh, and one more thing about boundaries being crossed. A little side note about Donald Trump. It wasn't until that lady who kept saying, it wasn't until he made it personal that I didn't like him. Really? So you were fine with how everything else was running, but when he made fun of your mentally handicapped son, that's when you draw the line. Not how he ran the nation, not his politics, not his regiments, not his quality of character or anything like that. It was when he was making fun of your mentally handicapped son. Oh, that's when I just drew the line. Oh, that's just not it. Really. So he would run this country into the ground, and you wouldn't care, is what you're saying. As long as it's not about your son, then you're okay with it. That's what it sounds like to me. And it's like, it should be more, not that he's being personal, is that it should be his character. It should be how he runs things. It should be, oh, I don't know, his presidency. That's what's important. But we learned too late when he got in there. It's like, it's as bad as we thought. Nope, it's worse. Way, way worse. But you have your standards. Everything's screwed on right. It's like, oh. No. I wasn't going to vote for him. I was probably going to just go for Hillary. But again, I couldn't find that voting booth anywhere near me, so I don't know. So I work nights. I have to sleep during the day. Okay, leave me alone. So that's about it for off-screen characters and racism. And I've already explained about the Captain Planet episode on racism. And oh, and Star Trek Enterprise, where they were talking about racism on that, on how after the Star Trek 9/11, where people were upset at aliens because aliens came and killed us, and it's like the guy can't even get. It's like comical. It's like the doctor goes to the doctor is an alien, so he goes down to have a beer, and a guy is trying to give him shit for it, but he gets his species wrong. He says, "No, that's Vulcan." And it's like, wow, a misinformed, emotional racist, huh? Who can't get the race right. Wow. So it's a disarming thing. It's like, wow, you have death and heavy consequence, but heaven forbid you actually have a racist that actually is, I don't know, a threat to anybody. And what does Dr. Phlox do? He inflates his head like keep me that green guy sidekick to on Futurama, where he inflates his head, and it's like, really? That's it? Oh, and then later he says, no, I'm not gonna go down there. It's fine. I'm okay with it. Teardrop. That sort of thing. And he said how his aunt, uncle, one of his other relatives was like explaining how he didn't want to go to a planet even though all the other aliens were gone. He says it's their stink. It's still there. It's this their filth. And it kind of reminded me of that dad from the Idiot's Lantern episode of Doctor Who, where he was saying why he was rounding up the faceless people because of their filth, and he was like making it like he was like freaking the fuck out about it because they're filthy, they're filth. It's like, what? So it's like supposed to legitimize his racism, and it's like, huh. When I started to deconstruct racism, I never thought filth or disgusting, really. Because, it's a foreign concept to me. Let me look down my nose at anybody. It's like, I was never raised to look down at people. I pity people, sure. And kind of look down and like, what's wrong with this guy? Or this person? Or head scratching at the decision making. It isn't until you get older you look at things and you see things and you see people with problems. It's like, that could come up as racism. But honestly, it's kind of just... It just feels like the same bad joke over and over and over again you see. Where it's like, I'm beginning to understand something. It's like when you give people ammo, you can make it easy for them. Where it's like, it's the same element over and over and over again. It's like, well, if you stop doing that, you would probably not only succeed, but you get these people off your back too. But then again, I'm not a society. I'm a person. So yeah, and not everyone can really see a problem or willing to change because of a problem. You know, why should I change? I'm fine the way I am. Remember, that's our culture. We're not bad. We're fine the way we are. Apparently, improvement is a foreign concept to a lot of people. We're morbidly obese, but I have a fantastic personality, so therefore there's nothing wrong with me. Shallow Al, anyone? It's like, oh no, being morbidly obese is perfectly okay. It's a perfectly fine lifestyle to find you in. No, it's not. It's like, no, she should have fucking diabetes or some sort of fucking health issue. She shouldn't be walking through this like it's nothing. Like, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm like I'm like 4 or 500 pounds, but I'm fine. It's like, no 4 or 500 pound person is fine. They have horrible. They neither have slight health issues or they have major health issues. It's not. It doesn't exist. That's the thing with Shallow Al. It's like, so she's fat. It's like, if she's fat, she'd probably be husky. If anything, she's morbidly obese. Yeah, she would have she'd be hospitalized. That's not how that works. But it wasn't about being fat. Then what is it being about? Then why would you make your character fat if not also to have health issues? You know, it's stupid that way. If you're gonna have issues with a character, you have issues with a character. You don't leave elements out. You bring in all of it to be realistic. Be artsy, fine, but if you're gonna go for drama and realism, you gotta bring it all in. Anyway. Anyway. That's probably a things going on in my head right now. It's probably for a later review once I flesh it out a bit more. But yeah. So Hollywood is in quite a state right now. I remember when it was just being so nice and simple. Back in the day, we had hard problems, but you talked about it. You not exactly dealt with it, but you were, it was there. It was present. But you didn't know how to deal with it at first. But it was there. You know, pretending it doesn't happen doesn't make for a good story. You know, Sven in Voltron, he dies, is replaced by his brother, and then he dies, and it's like, no, 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 he didn't die. He went to the hospital planet. You know, it's like when it doesn't all have to be about death. You know, you can talk about everything else, but seeing Optimus Prime die, oh, that just kills you right there. That's you were having it's a bad day, flat out. The rest of the day is a bad day when Optimus Prime died. That's why Duke was, kind of off screen over the radio saying, "Oh yeah, he's fine. He came out of his coma, even though he was, bitten right in the heart by a poisonous snake. He's fine. He's just in a coma." It's like, yeah, I didn't know you could be bitten in the heart by a cobra and just go into a coma and be okay, like literally 2 days later. But then, they bring characters back. Death isn't permanent in a lot of cartoon series, which is kind of neat. That you can actually kind of get around that a little bit. But yeah. Um. So. Uh. What else was there? What else was there? What else was there? Trying to stick to, have a character not come back. Like, say, Tony Stark. Let's go Tony Stark. It's on my mind right now. Have him say he's never coming back. It's like, I kind of doubt that. He'll probably come back at the end for a final sequence where You know, and whether they're like in stage 4, probably at the end of stage 4, they'll probably bring him back for like some sort of final fight, like they need this world's smartest man or something. I'm pretty sure they'll reverse that at some point when they bring back Thanos, and then bring him back too, and all that fun stuff. I believe, because they say sticking to that, it's like you guys don't stick to anything. Marvel and DC, they don't stick to anything. Corporate mandates, like people don't ever really die. They just go off screen, then come back. But it is a bit difficult when your contract is up. So, but I think having signing up for to come back at the last scene as your final movie to come back to your family, I think would be rather nice in some future installment of the Avengers. You know, yeah, and maybe in 5 years, have them come back. After a good couple of movies pass, and you get back to an Avengers thing where they go up against. Well, they've already gone up against Ultron, and ooh, the next installment should be about that. No, not Metron. That's DC. Lord Kang. Yeah, Kang should be next because they already did Age of Apocalypse and Ultron, and they already took on Thanos. So I think the next one should be, since they're doing time, uh, Kang should show up, undo the last snap. Thus also brings Tony back. Thus brings Thanos back, and then they have an all-out thing about that, where Tony's back with his family. That's what I think should happen. I would I would pay good money to see that. So yeah, have him come back for the end sequence for that, and have him retire after that. Have him just be like this, uh, you know, go to this place, corporate headquarters, and have him just give orders from there from now on. So it's like it's from, like Shield, like Fury isn't always present, but he says it's from Shield and stuff. So you see, like this is from Tony. So any future installments after that will be, it's from him. He's just over there retiring, but still giving orders. He's no longer on the field. He's like the captain or a coach. He's just in the high tower giving out orders to the troops down on the ground. So yeah, it's one way I'd get around it. You know. So sticking to your guns is one thing, but also creatively getting around them is also very fun and accepting when you can creatively get around it, not bullshit your way through stuff. Don't ever have a writer bullshit his way through a storyline through writing. It just doesn't work. It's just bad writing. It's cheap writing. So I guess that's all I have to say about that. Um, and yeah, I'm looking forward to Phase 4. How they're going to incorporate, now that Disney's bought Fox, how they're going to bring back or incorporate the X-Men into this. However way they're going to do that. But I hope it's going to be interesting and fun and enjoyable. I'm going to miss you, Stanley. I'm going to miss you. I hope they stockpiled a bunch of cameos with that guy, so we can at least still see him. Like in Lost, they said, no one ever really dies. They live on in backflashes. Alright, well, I guess that's all the time for us today. So take care, everyone. And hopefully I'll see you at the next big movie. Alright, see ya. Bye.